In a small, quiet town nestled between rolling hills and dense forests, life moved at a slow, predictable pace. Everyone knew each other by name, and the biggest excitement usually came from the annual Harvest Festival or a high school football game. It was the kind of place where people locked their doors more out of habit than necessity. For Marcus and Jasmine, it was supposed to be a fresh start, a chance to leave behind the chaos and danger they had faced for years in the military. Marcus, tall and broad-shouldered with sharp eyes that missed nothing, had spent nearly a decade as an elite sniper in the Army. His precision and calm under pressure had earned him respect among his peers, but also left him carrying scars, both visible and invisible. Jasmine, his younger sister, was equally formidable. Petite but fierce, she had served as a combat medic, saving lives on the battlefield while dodging bullets herself. Together, they were a team, bonded not just by blood but by shared experiences that most people couldn't begin to imagine. When they returned to their hometown after their service, they hoped for peace. They wanted to reconnect with old friends, rebuild relationships, and live ordinary lives. Marcus took up carpentry, finding solace in working with his hands, while Jasmine volunteered at the local clinic, using her medical skills to help those in need. Their days were filled with simple pleasures: morning coffee on the porch, long walks through the woods, and evenings spent watching old movies together. For the first time in years, they felt safe. But safety is often fragile, especially when you least expect trouble. One crisp autumn evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, Marcus and Jasmine decided to take a leisurely walk to the nearby grocery store. The air smelled of fallen leaves and wood smoke, and the streets were empty except for the occasional passing car. They chatted about mundane things, the weather, their plans for the weekend, and how much they enjoyed being back home. As they turned onto a dimly lit side street on their way back, the atmosphere shifted. At first, it was subtle, a faint rustling in the bushes, the sound of footsteps echoing behind them. Marcus glanced over his shoulder but saw nothing unusual. He dismissed it as paranoia, a remnant of his time in war zones where every shadow could hide an enemy. But then, without warning, a group of figures stepped out from the darkness, blocking their path. There were 6 of them, all wearing masks and hoodies, their faces obscured. One of them, taller than the rest, sneered and spat insults about outsiders, ruining their town. Marcus immediately stepped in front of Jasmine, shielding her with his body. "Stay back," he said firmly, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. Jasmine didn't argue. She trusted her brother completely. The leader of the gang laughed cruelly, motioning for his companions to surround them. They brandished bats and knives, their intentions clear. Fear gripped Jasmine's heart, but beneath it lay something else: anger. How dare these cowards attack innocent people? She clenched her fists, ready to fight if she had to. Marcus stood rigid, his posture tense, every muscle coiled like a spring. Years of training kicked in, and he began assessing the situation: the number of attackers, their positions, potential escape routes. Without realizing it, he was slipping into the mindset of a soldier once again. The gang closed in, their taunts growing louder. Marcus locked eyes with the leader, trying to gauge his next move. When one of the attackers lunged forward, swinging a bat wildly, Marcus reacted instantly. He sidestepped, grabbing the man's wrist and twisting it until the weapon clattered to the ground. The attacker yelped in pain, stumbling backward. Another gang member charged at Jasmine, but she wasn't about to be a victim. Using techniques she'd learned during hand-to-hand combat training, she blocked his swing and delivered a swift kick to his knee, sending him crashing to the pavement. The fight escalated quickly. Marcus moved with precision, disarming another attacker and knocking him unconscious with a single punch. Jasmine, though smaller, was no less effective. She used her agility to evade blows and counterattack, her movements fluid and calculated. The siblings fought as if they were reading each other's minds, covering blind spots and protecting one another instinctively. It was like a dance, one they had practiced countless times in simulations and real-life missions. The gang, unprepared for such resistance, began to falter. Some dropped their weapons and ran while others hesitated, unsure whether to continue. By the time distant police sirens pierced the night air, only a few remained retreating into the shadows. Marcus and Jasmine stood amidst the aftermath, breathing heavily but unbroken. Their clothes were torn and bruises were already forming on their skin, but they had survived. As the reality of what had just happened sank in, Marcus turned to Jasmine. "You okay?" he asked, his voice softening now that the immediate threat was gone. She nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. "Yeah," she replied, forcing a smile. "We're still alive." They didn't speak much on the walk home, each lost in their thoughts. The peaceful evening they had envisioned had turned into a nightmare, shattering their illusion of safety. Yet even in the midst of fear and uncertainty, there was a strange sense of pride. They had faced overwhelming odds and emerged victorious, not because they were superheroes, but because they refused to give up. That night, as they sat in their living room nursing minor injuries, Marcus broke the silence. "Do you think we'll ever truly leave it behind?" he asked, referring to their past lives in the military. Jasmine sighed, staring at her hands. "I don't know," she admitted. "But maybe we don't have to. Maybe we can use what we've learned to protect ourselves and others." Little did they know this incident would mark the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. The attack had awakened something within them, a realization that their skills weren't meant to gather dust in peacetime, and as news of their bravery spread through the town, they would soon discover that their actions had inspired others to stand up against fear and injustice. Their journey was far from over. The morning after the attack, the town buzzed with whispers. People gathered in small clusters at the local cafe, grocery store, and even on street corners, discussing what had happened the previous night. News traveled fast in a close-knit community like theirs, and by sunrise nearly everyone knew about the siblings who had single-handedly taken down a gang of masked attackers. Details were murky. Some claimed there were 10 assailants, others said 20, but one thing was clear. Marcus and Jasmine had done something extraordinary. At first, the siblings tried to avoid attention. They went about their day as usual, hoping the commotion would die down. Marcus focused on his carpentry work, sanding wood and hammering nails with quiet determination. Jasmine volunteered her time at the clinic, tending to patients and offering comforting words. But no matter where they went, people stared. Some offered timid smiles, while others approached them directly to express gratitude or admiration. It made both siblings uncomfortable. They weren't used to being in the spotlight. Later that afternoon, a young reporter named Sarah knocked on their door. She worked for the local newspaper and had heard about the incident from several eyewitnesses. "I'd love to write a story about what happened," she said earnestly when Marcus answered. He hesitated, glancing back at Jasmine, who stood silently in the doorway behind him. They exchanged a look, silently weighing the pros and cons of speaking publicly about the attack. "We don't want any trouble," Marcus finally replied, his tone cautious. Sarah nodded quickly, understanding their concern. "Of course, I'll respect your privacy. But think about it. Your story could inspire people. You stood up against violence when most would have run away." Her words struck a chord with Jasmine, who stepped forward. "Let us talk about it first," she said, softly, closing the door gently. That evening, Marcus and Jasmine sat together in their living room, debating whether to share their story. On one hand, they feared drawing unwanted attention, not just from curious townsfolk, but also from those who might recognize their military backgrounds. On the other hand, they couldn't deny the potential impact of sharing their experience. If telling their story encouraged others to stand up against injustice, wasn't it worth it? After much deliberation, they agreed to meet with Sarah again. This time, they laid out their terms. No mention of their specific military roles, no exaggerations, and no hero worship. They wanted the focus to be on resilience and unity rather than individual glory. Sarah eagerly accepted their conditions, promising to honor their wishes. When the article appeared in the next edition of the paper, it caused a stir, titled, "Courage in the Face of Danger." The piece highlighted Marcus and Jasmine's bravery without revealing too many personal details. The reporter described how the siblings had defended themselves with remarkable skill, emphasizing the importance of standing up against crime and protecting one's community. The response was overwhelming. People began approaching Marcus and Jasmine not just to thank them, but to ask questions. How had they managed to fight off so many attackers? What advice could they offer for staying safe in dangerous situations? At first, the siblings were reluctant to engage. They didn't see themselves as experts or role models. They were simply two people trying to live quietly. But as more requests poured in, they realized they couldn't ignore the growing interest. One Saturday morning, the town hall hosted a community meeting to discuss safety measures following the attack. Marcus and Jasmine attended reluctantly, expecting to blend into the background. However, when the moderator invited them to speak, they found themselves unable to decline. Standing before a packed room, Jasmine cleared her throat nervously. "We're not here to tell you how to live your lives," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "But we do believe that preparation can make all the difference." Marcus took over, explaining basic self-defense techniques and strategies for staying aware of one's surroundings. He demonstrated simple moves using a volunteer from the audience, showing how even someone smaller could defend themselves effectively. Jasmine added practical tips on first aid, teaching attendees how to handle minor injuries until professional help arrived. Their presentation was concise yet impactful, leaving the crowd inspired and empowered. Word of their expertise spread beyond the town limits. Neighboring communities invited them to give talks, and soon they became unofficial ambassadors for personal safety. Despite their initial reluctance, Marcus and Jennifer embraced their new roles, seeing an opportunity to make a difference. They organized workshops, trained volunteers, and even helped establish neighborhood watch programs. Their efforts brought people together, fostering a sense of camaraderie and shared responsibility. As weeks turned into months, the siblings noticed subtle changes in the town. Residents started looking out for one another, reporting suspicious activity, and organizing events to strengthen community bonds. Crime rates dropped significantly, and the once feared gang that had attacked Marcus and Jasmine disbanded under increased scrutiny from law enforcement. The transformation was remarkable, and Marcus and Jasmine couldn't help but feel proud of their contribution. But with recognition came challenges. Some residents grew overly reliant on the siblings, seeking their advice for every little issue. Others questioned why they hadn't revealed their full military backgrounds earlier, accusing them of hiding secrets. Though these criticisms stung, Marcus and Jasmine reminded themselves why they had chosen to stay humble. They weren't heroes, they were ordinary people who had risen to the occasion when needed. Despite the occasional negativity, the positives far outweighed the negatives. Strangers thanked them for giving them courage. Parents praised them for teaching their children valuable life skills. Even local officials acknowledged their role in revitalizing the town's spirit. Through it all, Marcus and Jasmine remained grounded, focusing on the bigger picture. One evening, as they walked through the park where they often spent time reflecting, Marcus stopped and looked around. Children played on swings, couples strolled hand in hand, and elderly folks chatted on benches. The scene was peaceful, almost idyllic. "Do you think we ever imagined this?" he asked, turning to Jasmine. She smiled faintly, shaking her head. "Not in a million years." Their journey from victims of a brutal attack to pillars of their community had been unexpected, challenging, and rewarding. Along the way, they had rediscovered parts of themselves they thought they'd left behind. Their strength, their resourcefulness, and their ability to inspire others. Though they still carried the weight of their pasts, they now understood that those experiences weren't burdens. They were tools. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the park, Marcus and Jasmine continued their walk. They didn't know what the future held, but they were ready to face it, together. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they knew they wouldn't have to face them alone. And in that knowledge, they found peace. As the weeks passed, Marcus and Jasmine found themselves at the center of a growing movement in their town. People admired them not just for their bravery during the attack, but also for their willingness to teach others how to protect themselves. Workshops became a regular occurrence, held in community centers, schools, and even churches. The siblings worked tirelessly, sharing their knowledge without hesitation. They taught self-defense techniques, discussed situational awareness, and emphasized the importance of staying calm under pressure. Despite their efforts, however, not everyone was pleased with their newfound prominence. A small group of residents grew suspicious, whispering behind closed doors about the siblings' mysterious pasts. "Why won't they tell us everything?" one man muttered during a town meeting. "What are they hiding?" Another woman chimed in, her voice sharp. "They act like they're doing us a favor, but maybe they're just showing off." Marcus overheard these comments during a break in the meeting and felt a familiar pang of frustration. He had hoped that by keeping their military backgrounds private, they could avoid stirring up unnecessary drama. But now it seemed their silence was being misinterpreted as arrogance. Jasmine noticed his clenched jaw and placed a reassuring hand on his arm. "Let it go," she whispered. "We can't please everyone." Later that evening, sitting on their porch with cups of tea, the siblings reflected on the criticism. "Do you think we should have told them more from the start?" Jasmine asked, staring into the darkening sky. Marcus shook his head firmly. "No. Our past isn't relevant here. What matters is what we're doing now, helping people feel safer." Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that some folks would always see them differently because of who they used to be. Their concerns deepened when rumors began circulating about another gang forming in the area. Unlike the previous attackers, this new group operated in secret, striking quickly and disappearing before anyone could react. Local businesses reported vandalism, homes were broken into, and fear crept back into the hearts of the townspeople. Some accused Marcus and Jasmine of provoking retaliation by standing up against crime, while others looked to them for guidance. One chilly morning, a young boy named Ethan came running up to their house, breathless and wide-eyed. "They took my dad," he cried, tears streaming down his face. Marcus crouched down to meet him at eye level. "Who took your dad, Ethan? Tell me everything." The boy explained that masked men had dragged his father out of their home last night. No one had seen or heard anything since. Jasmine exchanged a worried glance with Marcus. This was worse than they'd feared. Gang activity escalating to kidnappings signaled a dangerous shift. Without hesitation, Marcus grabbed his phone and called the police, relaying the details of Ethan's story. Then he turned to Jasmine. "We need to do something." The siblings sprang into action, using their skills to gather information. They visited neighbors, asking questions and piecing together clues. Marcus mapped out potential hideouts based on patterns in recent criminal activity, while Jasmine reached out to her contacts at the clinic to see if anyone had treated suspicious injuries. Together they worked methodically, determined to find answers. By the end of the day, they had narrowed down 3 possible locations where the gang might be holding hostages. Knowing they couldn't storm in alone, they shared their findings with the authorities. The police promised to investigate further, but Marcus and Jasmine knew time was critical. Every second counted for Ethan's father, and possibly others like him. That night, unable to sleep, Marcus paced the living room, while Jasmine sat quietly on the couch, her mind racing. "What if we're wrong?" she asked softly. "What if we lead them to the wrong place?" Marcus stopped pacing and looked at her. "Then we try again. We can't sit back and do nothing." Early the next morning, armed with flashlights and determination, the siblings accompanied the police to the first suspected location, an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. As officers surrounded the building, Marcus and Jasmine stayed close, ready to assist if needed. Inside, they discovered evidence of recent occupation: discarded food wrappers, makeshift beds, and graffiti covering the walls. But no hostages. Disappointed yet undeterred, they moved on to the second site, a dilapidated farmhouse hidden deep in the woods. Again, they found signs of activity but no captives. By the time they reached the third location, a crumbling old mill near the river, The tension was palpable. If this wasn't the right place, they didn't know where else to look. As they approached the mill cautiously, Marcus spotted something odd: fresh tire tracks leading toward the entrance. He signaled for the team to move forward carefully. Inside, they heard faint voices echoing through the dimly lit space. Heart pounding, Marcus gestured for everyone to stay quiet. Slowly, they crept closer until they reached a locked door. With a nod from Marcus, an officer kicked the door open, revealing a grim scene. Several men tied up and gagged huddled together, including Ethan's father. Relief washed over Marcus and Jasmine as they rushed to untie the hostages. One man groaned weakly, "Thank God you're here." But their relief was short-lived. Suddenly, shouts erupted from above. A group of gang members had returned, unaware of the raid. Chaos ensued as the officers engaged in a tense standoff with the criminals. Marcus and Jasmine sprang into action, helping shield the hostages while the police subdued the attackers. Once again, their military training proved invaluable, allowing them to remain calm and focused amidst the chaos. When the dust settled, all the gang members were arrested and the hostages were safely escorted outside. Ethan ran to his father, sobbing with joy as they embraced tightly. Watching the reunion, Marcus and Jasmine felt a surge of pride mixed with exhaustion. They had done what they set out to do, not for recognition, but because it was the right thing. Back at home later that night, they collapsed onto the couch, too tired to speak. For a long moment, there was only silence. Finally, Jasmine broke it. "Do you think this will ever end? The fighting, the danger?" Marcus sighed deeply. "Probably not. But that doesn't mean we stop trying. We've made a difference here. Jas, that's enough for me." And so life in the town continued to change. The arrest of the gang brought a renewed sense of security, though Marcus and Jasmine remained vigilant. Their role as protectors had become a part of who they were, blending seamlessly with their desire for peace and normalcy. Though challenges still lay ahead, they faced them side by side, knowing they had each other and the support of a grateful community to lean on. The arrest of the gang marked a turning point for the town, but it also brought unexpected complications for Marcus and Jasmine. Their involvement in dismantling the criminal network had earned them even more admiration from some residents, while others grew increasingly wary. Rumors swirled about their pasts, fueled by those who believed the siblings' skills were too extraordinary to be explained by mere self-defense training. "They're hiding something," one neighbor whispered at the grocery store. "Maybe they're not just ordinary people." Despite the growing unease among certain factions, Marcus and Jasmine remained steadfast in their mission to help the community. They continued organizing workshops teaching practical skills like first aid, situational awareness, and conflict resolution. Yet as weeks turned into months, they noticed subtle changes in how people interacted with them. Some treated them with reverence, almost as if they were untouchable heroes. Others kept their distance, unsure whether to trust them fully. One afternoon, as Jasmine sorted supplies at the clinic, an elderly woman approached her hesitantly. "I heard you used to work overseas," the woman said softly, her voice tinged with curiosity. "Is that true?" Jasmine paused, taken aback by the question. She smiled politely and nodded. "Yes, I did. But that's all in the past now." The woman didn't press further, but her lingering gaze made Jasmine uneasy. It was clear that the town's fascination with their history wasn't going away anytime soon. Marcus faced similar scrutiny during his carpentry jobs. Clients would often ask casual questions. "How long were you in the military, or did you see combat?" That felt anything but casual. At first, he brushed them off with vague answers, but the constant probing began to wear on him. One day, after finishing a project for a client who wouldn't stop asking intrusive questions, Marcus snapped. "Why does it matter so much?" he asked sharply. "Does knowing my past change who I am today?" His outburst spread quickly through the grapevine, sparking heated debates among townsfolk. Some defended Marcus, arguing that everyone deserved privacy. Others insisted that transparency was key to building trust. The controversy reached its peak when a local radio station invited Marcus and Jasmine to appear on a live show to address the rumors once and for all. Reluctantly, the siblings agreed to participate, hoping to put an end to the speculation. The night of the broadcast, they sat side by side in the studio, gripping each other's hands under the table. The host opened with a barrage of questions, starting with their military service. "Can you tell our listeners what exactly you did during your time overseas?" she asked, leaning forward eagerly. Jasmine took a deep breath before responding. "We served our country in different capacities. That's all we feel comfortable sharing. What matters most is what we're doing here and now, helping this community grow stronger." Her tone was calm but firm, leaving little room for argument. When the host pressed harder, Marcus stepped in. "Look, we came back here because we wanted peace. We didn't expect to become public figures or have our lives dissected. All we've ever wanted is to make a positive impact, and that's what we'll keep doing." Their words resonated with many listeners, silencing critics, at least temporarily. After the interview, supportive messages poured in from across the town and beyond. Strangers thanked them for their honesty and urged them to continue their work. For the first time in weeks, Marcus and Jasmine felt a sense of relief, as though they had finally drawn a line between their private lives and their public roles. But the reprieve was short-lived. A few days later, a letter arrived at their doorstep. Written in bold, blocky letters, it read, "Stop sticking your noses where they don't belong. You've caused enough trouble already." Beneath the threat was a crude drawing of a knife, dripping with blood. Jasmine's hands trembled as she held the note, her mind racing with possibilities. Who could have sent it? Was it someone connected to the gang they had helped dismantle? Marcus immediately called the police, who assured them they would investigate the matter thoroughly. In the meantime, officers increased patrols around their neighborhood as a precaution. Despite these measures, the threat lingered over them like a dark cloud, casting doubt on every interaction and shadow they passed. To distract themselves, Marcus and Jasmine threw themselves into their routines. They organized another workshop, this time focusing on cybersecurity and protecting personal information online. As Jasmine spoke to a packed room about creating strong passwords and recognizing phishing scams, she couldn't help but notice the irony. Here she was, teaching others how to stay safe, yet she and Marcus were struggling to feel secure in their own home. That evening, as they walked through the park, a place they once found peaceful, they noticed a man lurking near the edge of the trees. He wore a hoodie pulled low over his face, making it impossible to identify him. Marcus instinctively stepped in front of Jasmine, his body tense. "Let's go," he muttered, steering her toward the exit. Neither of them looked back until they reached their car. Once home, they double-checked the locks on all doors and windows, something they hadn't done since moving back to the town. Sleep eluded them that night. Every creak of the floorboards or rustle of leaves outside set their nerves on edge. By morning, both siblings were exhausted, their minds heavy with worry. Determined not to let fear dictate their lives, they decided to take action. Marcus contacted an old friend from his military days, a security expert named Ryan, and asked for advice. Ryan suggested installing surveillance cameras around their property and enrolling in a refresher course on defensive tactics. "You can never be too careful," he warned. "People like you attract attention whether you want it or not." Over the next few days, Marcus and Jasmine fortified their home, adding motion sensors and reinforcing doors. They also practiced evasive maneuvers in case they ever needed to flee quickly. Though these preparations made them feel marginally safer, the underlying tension remained. Every knock on the door or unfamiliar face in the crowd triggered a surge of anxiety. Despite the heightened alertness, life in the town carried on. People went about their daily routines, seemingly oblivious to the siblings' struggles. To outsiders, Marcus and Jasmine appeared as composed as ever, continuing their efforts to strengthen the community. But behind closed doors, they grappled with the weight of their choices. Had they pushed too hard? Should they have stayed quiet and avoided drawing attention? One crisp autumn afternoon, as they sat together on the porch watching golden leaves swirl in the wind, Jasmine voiced her Thoughts aloud. Do you ever wish we'd never gotten involved? If we hadn't fought back that night, none of this would have happened. Marcus leaned back in his chair, contemplating her words. Maybe, he admitted after a moment. But then again, maybe things would have been worse. We stood up for ourselves, and for everyone else. Isn't that worth it? Jasmine didn't respond right away. Instead, she gazed at the horizon where the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She thought about all they had endured, the attacks, the criticism, the threats, and realized something profound. They weren't just survivors, they were fighters. And no matter how challenging the road ahead might be, they would face it together. Night fell and stars began to twinkle overhead. Marcus broke the silence. We've got each other, Jas. No matter what happens, we'll get through it. His voice was steady, filled with conviction. Jasmine nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. For the first time in weeks, she felt a flicker of hope. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would meet them head-on, not out of obligation, but because it was who they were. The weeks that followed the threatening letter were a blur of heightened caution and relentless activity for Marcus and Jasmine. Though they had taken steps to secure their home and protect themselves, the shadow of danger loomed large over their lives. Every unfamiliar sound, every lingering glance from a stranger felt like a potential threat. Yet, instead of retreating into isolation, the siblings doubled down on their commitment to helping others. They believed that staying active in the community would not only keep them grounded, but also send a message. They refused to be intimidated. One Saturday morning, they hosted a special event at the town hall, a safety and resilience day, aimed at empowering residents with practical tools to face emergencies. The turnout was overwhelming. Families brought their children, seniors arrived with walkers, and even teenagers showed up, curious about what the day might offer. Booths lined the room, each offering workshops on different topics: fire safety, emergency preparedness, conflict resolution, and basic self-defense. Marcus and Jasmine moved between stations, guiding participants through exercises and answering questions. At one booth, Marcus demonstrated how to create a makeshift tourniquet using items commonly found in a household. He spoke calmly, his voice steady as he explained the importance of stopping bleeding quickly in critical situations. Nearby, Jasmine taught a group of women simple yet effective self-defense moves, encouraging them to practice shouting commands like "back off" or "help" to draw attention during an attack. Her energy was infectious, and soon the entire room buzzed with determination. As the day wore on, Marcus noticed a young man lingering near the entrance, watching intently, but keeping his distance. Something about him seemed familiar, though. Marcus couldn't quite place it. When the crowd thinned later in the afternoon, the young man approached hesitantly. "Are you Marcus?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Marcus nodded, his guard instinctively rising. "Yes, and this is my sister, Jasmine." The young man glanced at her briefly before focusing back on Marcus. "My name's Tyler," he said. I think I know who sent that letter." Jasmine froze, her eyes narrowing slightly. "What do you mean?" she asked, her tone cautious but firm. Tyler shifted uncomfortably, glancing around as if afraid someone might overhear. "Can we talk somewhere private?" They led him to a quiet corner of the building, where Tyler hesitated before speaking again. "It's my older brother," he confessed finally. "He's part of a gang, the same one you helped take down last month. He's angry because you ruined their plans, and he blames you for everything that's happened since." Marcus exchanged a glance with Jasmine, both processing the weight of Tyler's words. "Why are you telling us this?" Marcus asked, his voice low but calm. Tyler looked down at his hands, guilt etched across his face. "Because I don't want anyone else to get hurt. My brother's dangerous, and he won't stop until he gets revenge. But if you go to the police now, maybe you can stop him before things escalate." Jasmine placed a gentle hand on Tyler's shoulder. "Thank you for coming forward," she said sincerely. "This takes courage." Tyler nodded, tears welling in his eyes. "Just promise me you'll be careful. he whispered before slipping away into the crowd. That evening, Marcus and Jasmine sat together at the kitchen table, discussing what to do next. "We need to report this to the police," Marcus said, firmly. "If Tyler's brother is planning something, we can't risk ignoring it." Jasmine agreed, though her mind raced with concerns. What if Tyler's warning came too late? What if the gang struck before law enforcement could act? Early the next morning, they met with Detective Harris, the officer who had been handling their case since the original attack. After hearing Tyler's story, Harris promised to investigate further and increase surveillance on known gang members. Still, he warned them not to let their guard down. "These kinds of people operate unpredictably," he said. "Stay vigilant." The days that followed were tense. Marcus and Jasmine avoided unnecessary outings, sticking close to home whenever possible. At night, they took turns patrolling the perimeter of their property, ensuring no one was lurking nearby. Despite their precautions, the waiting game weighed heavily on them. Each passing hour felt like a ticking clock, counting down to an unknown disaster. Then, one chilly evening, the tension reached its breaking point. As Marcus checked the security cameras installed outside their house, he spotted movement near the edge of the woods. Zooming in, he saw two figures dragging what appeared to be a large sack toward their backyard. His heart pounded as he grabbed his phone and called 911, whispering urgent instructions to the dispatcher. "Stay inside," Marcus told Jasmine as he quietly locked all the doors. She shook her head defiantly. "No way. We're doing this together." Reluctantly, he handed her a flashlight and motioned for her to stay behind him as they crept toward the living room window. Peering through the blinds, they watched as the figures dropped the sack and began approaching the house. Suddenly, one of them produced a crowbar, testing the strength of the front door. Marcus signaled for Jasmine to retreat, but she refused, gripping the flashlight tightly. "We've faced worse," she reminded him softly. Before either of them could decide on their next move, red and blue lights flashed in the distance. The sound of sirens pierced the night, startling the intruders. One of them cursed loudly, dropping the crowbar as they scrambled back toward the woods. Officers arrived moments later, fanning out to search the area. Though the suspects managed to escape into the forest, they left behind the sack and evidence linking them to Tyler's brother. Inside the sack, investigators discovered tools for forced entry, along with documents containing detailed maps of Marcus and Jasmine's property. It was clear the gang had planned a targeted attack, intending to break in and harm them. The discovery sent shockwaves through the town, reigniting fears about lingering criminal activity. Once again, Marcus and Jasmine found themselves at the center of attention, but this time, the sentiment was overwhelmingly supportive. Residents rallied around them, organizing neighborhood patrols and fundraising efforts to enhance local security measures. Even those who had once questioned their motives now stood firmly by their side. "You've done so much for us," one woman said during a community meeting. "Now it's our turn to protect you." Though touched by the outpouring of support, Marcus and Jasmine knew the fight wasn't over. Gang activity still posed a threat, and their involvement meant they remained targets. But rather than succumbing to fear, they chose to channel their energy into strengthening the community even further. They worked with local leaders to establish a permanent safety committee, tasked with addressing issues ranging from crime prevention to mental health resources. Their efforts paid off. Over time, reports of suspicious activity dwindled, and the sense of unity within the town grew stronger. Marcus and Jasmine became symbols of resilience, not just because of their skills, but because of their unwavering dedication to protecting others. People began referring to them affectionately as the Guardians, a title they accepted humbly. One evening, as they sat together on the porch, Jasmine turned to Marcus with a thoughtful expression. "Do you think we'll ever truly escape all this?" she asked, gesturing vaguely to encompass their chaotic journey. Marcus smiled faintly, leaning back in his chair. "Maybe not. But I don't think we have to. This is our life now, helping people, standing up when it matters, and honestly, I wouldn't trade it for anything. Jasmine chuckled softly, shaking her head. You always did have a way of making sense of things. For a long moment, they sat in companionable silence, listening to the rustle of leaves and distant laughter of children playing in the park. Though challenges undoubtedly lay ahead, they faced them with confidence, not as individuals, but as a team. In the end, Marcus and Jasmine realized that their strength didn't come from their military training or extraordinary abilities. It came from their bond with each other and the trust they shared with their community. Together, they had built something far greater than themselves, a legacy of courage, compassion, and hope. Months passed and the town began to heal. The heightened tension that had gripped everyone after the attempted break-in slowly eased as law enforcement cracked down on remaining gang activity. With each arrest, the community felt safer and life returned to its familiar rhythm. Marcus and Jasmine continued their work, but now they did so with a renewed sense of purpose. They weren't just teaching self-defense or organizing workshops, they were building something lasting, a foundation of resilience for future generations. One crisp spring morning, the siblings stood at the edge of the park where they often walked, watching as volunteers planted trees in honor of those who had contributed to making the town safer. Among them was Tyler, the young man who had warned them about his brother's plans. He had turned his life around, enrolling in a vocational program and dedicating himself to helping others. When he spotted Marcus and Jasmine, he waved warmly before returning to his task. Seeing him filled them both with pride. They knew their actions had ripple effects far beyond what they could see. As the day unfolded, Marcus and Jasmine attended a ceremony unveiling a new mural in the town square. Painted by local artists, it depicted scenes of unity and strength, families holding hands, first responders aiding victims, and two figures standing tall against a stormy backdrop, clearly inspired by Marcus and Jasmine. Though neither sibling sought recognition, they couldn't deny the impact this symbol would have on the community. It reminded everyone that even in darkness, there was light if people came together. Later that evening, as they sat on their porch sipping tea, Jasmine broke the silence. "Do you ever think about leaving?" she asked quietly. Marcus raised an eyebrow, surprised by the question. "Leaving? Why would we leave?" Jasmine shrugged, tracing patterns on her mug with her finger. "I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if we've done enough here, if maybe it's time to move on." Her voice carried a hint of uncertainty, something rare for her. Marcus set his cup down and leaned forward, meeting her gaze. "We could leave," he said slowly. "But where would we go? This is our home now, not just because we grew up here, but because we've built something meaningful." His words lingered in the air between them. Jasmine nodded thoughtfully, realizing he was right. Their roots ran deep in this soil, intertwined with the lives they had touched. Leaving wouldn't erase the challenges they faced, nor would it diminish the responsibility they felt toward the town. Here, they had found their place, a balance between their past and present, between solitude and connection. The next morning brought another surprise. A letter arrived addressed to both of them, written in neat cursive handwriting. Inside it read, "To Marcus and Jasmine, thank you for showing us that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. You've inspired me to join the military, to serve and protect like you did. Thank you for being heroes without capes." Signed simply as, "A grateful neighbor," the note left them speechless. For hours afterward, they sat in silence, reflecting on how their journey had come full circle. Years ago, they had left the military hoping to escape violence and danger. Yet here they were, inspiring someone else to step into the very world they had tried to leave behind. It wasn't irony, it was legacy. Their experiences, no matter how painful, had shaped them into role models. And though the path hadn't been easy, they now understood its value. That weekend, the town hosted its annual Harvest Festival, a celebration of community spirit and shared effort. Stalls lined the streets, offering homemade pies, handcrafted, goods and games for children. Laughter echoed through the air, mingling with the sweet scent of caramelized apples and freshly baked bread. Marcus and Jasmine wandered through the crowd, stopping occasionally to chat with friends and acquaintances. At one stall, a group of teenagers eagerly approached them, asking for advice on staying safe while traveling abroad. Marcus smiled, recalling similar conversations from his youth. "Always trust your instincts," he told them, "and never underestimate the power of teamwork." Jasmine chimed in, emphasizing the importance of preparedness. "Knowledge is your best weapon," she said. "Learn the basics: first aid, navigation, communication, and you'll be ready for anything." Their words resonated deeply with the teens, who listened intently, hanging on to every sentence. Watching them, Jasmine felt a surge of hope. These young minds were eager to learn, to grow, to make a difference. Perhaps, she thought, this was the true measure of success, not fame or accolades, but the ability to inspire change. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the festivities, the mayor took the stage to deliver a closing speech. After thanking various contributors to the event, he turned to Marcus and Jasmine, inviting them to join him. Reluctantly, they stepped forward, greeted by thunderous applause. The mayor placed his hands on their shoulders, his expression earnest. "These two individuals embody everything this town stands for: courage, compassion, and resilience. Let's give them another round of applause." The crowd erupted into cheers, whistles, and clapping. For once, Marcus and Jasmine didn't shy away. Instead, they smiled humbly, acknowledging the love and gratitude surrounding them. As the noise subsided, Jasmine leaned toward the microphone. "Thank you," she began, her voice steady. "But remember, this isn't about us. It's about all of you. Together, we've made this town stronger, safer, and more united than ever. Keep looking out for each other. That's how we'll continue to thrive." Her words struck a chord, eliciting nods and murmurs of agreement from the audience. Marcus added, "We're proud to call this place home. Not because of what it looks like, but because of who we are when we stand together." The crowd responded with heartfelt cheers, sealing the moment forever in memory. When the festival ended and the streets emptied, Marcus and Jasmine lingered in the square, gazing at the illuminated mural. Its colors glowed softly under the lamplight, a beacon of hope and perseverance. "Do you think we'll still be remembered years from now?" Jasmine asked softly. Marcus chuckled, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "Does it matter? What matters is that we made a difference today, for ourselves, for each other, and for everyone here." They walked home together side by side as they always had. The road ahead might still hold challenges, uncertainties, and moments of doubt, but they faced it unafraid, knowing they had already conquered the greatest battle, finding peace within themselves and creating a legacy of strength for others to follow. In the quiet comfort of their living room, they settled onto the couch, content in the knowledge that they had truly come home, not to a place, but to a purpose. Whatever tomorrow held, they would face it together, guided by the lessons they had learned and the bonds they had forged. In that simple truth lay their greatest victory.